Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of the Big 12 Huddle. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glenn Alexander, joined with the co-host here, Night Bengal from the Knighted Ones podcast, and I am from the Oklahoma State podcast for the College Huddle, the CGA Tour. So, Night Bengal, how's it going? How you holding up there?
Better than I was a few hours ago. 24 hours ago, we were trying to figure out how much damage this hurricane was going to do. So, obviously a little bit relieved and found out today that we are playing against Cincy this weekend. So, I did get to drive through campus, and it didn't look like there was a whole lot of damage at campus, which was good. But the big thing was, we've been through this before, and we've had them canceled before, but it was more for the amount of first responders it takes to put on a game. People don't think about that. And there's a lot of people in need on the West Coast, but it looks like they've figured it out.
Well, that's great to hear, of course. Glad to hear everything's all well there. UCF, of course, thinking of everyone here who's not in that same type of fortunate situation. But with that being said here, this past weekend, I'm not going to make any just great transition here because that is a serious topic. But with that being said, I do want to talk about things that happened here this past weekend in the Big 12 so far. We did have, of course, both of our teams, UCF and Oklahoma State, did not just fare so well. We'll get to those in just a minute here, though. But first, I want to talk about that Houston TCU game on Friday night. Kind of shocked me. Houston goes into TCU. Houston's got I think they scored 80 something points this whole season so far, including this game where they scored 30. And I just, man, TCU, they're falling apart at the seams, right? Do you think their coach his seat might be a little warm, right? At this point?
I don't know. I mean, they came off of a national championship season 2 seasons ago. So a season and a half really ago. Last year they had a bunch of injuries and had some challenges going there and finished with a decent season, but not what TCU's used to. And then this year, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's going on with TCU. Their offense, can look like world beaters, and then at times it's like they just play a single half. The biggest thing we've been talking about all season with TCU is, can they put two halves of football together? This against Houston, I didn't get to watch the game because obviously I was a little bit occupied. But 30 points Houston put up. To your point, they put 50 points in they averaged 10 points a game prior to this game and just put up 30 points against TCU. We know TCU's defense isn't great, but they looked better than that when they've played others. So this may just be a game where Houston, had one of those games where everything, came together for them. Is TCU on the hot seat? I don't know. They're 3-3. They're 1-2 in the Big 12. There's a long season ahead, but they've got to fix some things quickly. Sonny Dykes is going to be in trouble.
Yeah, Sonny's really got to figure out the whole recruiting deal at this point. You can take another guy's players, and Gary Patterson had a lot of great players on the TCU roster. Now it's 2 years ago, but a year and a half ago, season wise, and yeah, it's tough to think that he's just going to be smooth sailing here for the rest of the season without any other hot seat talks because, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say completely imploding. I mean, it's not on him when his own team has 4 turnovers in the game, right? 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions. That's definitely not on the coach necessarily. But it also could be said something, hey, if this is a trend, then it definitely is on the coach, especially game over game. And the biggest thing that I look for right now as an Oklahoma State fan is just time of possession. Of course, we'll get to that later on. So when looking at that here for this Houston TCU game, man, Houston dominated the ball. They had the ball for 36 minutes. So it wasn't like they really had it. It wasn't as bad as some other time possession stats that I've seen in Big 12 from other games. But this one was definitely not great. Both teams have almost the same amount of first downs, same amount of yardage is really, really close as well, too. But when they're winning by 2 scores, that's where I go, okay, what happened here? And penalty-wise, both were kind of even. So it just is all turnovers, basically, at the end of the day. I mean, efficiency-wise, 3rd and 4th down efficiency, both teams are negligible differences really overall. And so, yeah, it is just one of those things where it's interesting to me. Houston does run the ball a lot better than TCU, but TCU is throwing the ball better. So you know,
Calvin, it really doesn't matter if you turn the ball over 4 times against any team. You're gonna trust me. We did that against Colorado pretty much, right? So it's gonna be a long day, and there's not very many games you're gonna win in college football if you've got 4 turnovers in one game. I mean that's this game that's open and shut. What happened to TCU? TCU has the ability to dink and dunk, but they also have the ability to go speed offense. They don't have a running game, right? So they took advantage of that. A lot of times, as a defense and a former defensive player, you're looking at, and the defensive coordinator is looking at 2 things: what are your tendencies and what are your strengths? Because they're going to try to take away those strengths. In this case, TCU's strength is the ability to dink and dunk down the field, make a quick read, get rid of the ball within 2 or 3 seconds, and then move the ball down the field that way. They took that away. And, again, turnovers. There's not much else to say. TCU's not that bad where Houston should have won, but Houston had a great game, and their offense came off of turnovers.
Yeah, and like you said, they scored they scored 30 points. They had scored 50 before that game. So they had an implosion on offense as far as just a ton of more points than they've scored the whole season so far, really. And that's gotta help them out a lot as well, too, and getting the ball in favorable spots with those turnovers. They're not Houston, I could be wrong. I do not think they're an offensive powerhouse the rest of the season here, though. I think they got very kind of fortunate a couple times and also just kind of played really good defense a couple times too. They have not allowed a ton of points in comparison as badly as their record would show. Being 2-4, I would think they'd be allowing 180, 3 times many points they scored the whole season. But when they're allowing like 120, they're not just absolutely getting blown out of the water in every single game. Sometimes they are, though. I mean, this is their first win of the season in the Big 12. And man, the only other win they have on the whole season is against Rice at home. So not great. But then again, maybe that OU game was a little bit more telltale sign of, hey, their defense can actually kind of hold some teams that are Power 5 teams to a little bit less points. But that being said, OU's offense hasn't looked that great either. So come back to it, revisit it here after this weekend when we gotta get some more Big 12 games under our belt here as well. One game that I really would of course love to talk about though is the Oklahoma State game, because I had Ryan from the Ryan and Rush show, the Big 12 huddles, the College Huddles, West Virginia podcast, and Ryan he was picking Oklahoma State to basically win. I mean, he just was like, hey, you guys at home, your preseason favorites or preseason top kind of couple there to win the Big 12 or at least contend. We're not in the same boat as West Virginia. I think you guys, after bad losses back to back to maybe the best 2 teams in the conference, yet to be seen, of course. Utah K-State, I bet you guys showed at home, and we completely fell flat. I cannot get over how bad our defense is, though, because West Virginia, they were just running the ball all over us. Where Oklahoma State is worse in the Big 12 in several categories. One's yards per game, another is rushing yards per game, and we're almost worse in passing yards per game too. So I don't know if this is a big shocker to anyone now because it's been a couple days, but yeah, I'm not picking Oklahoma State to win the conference anymore or contend for the conference championship. With that being
What?
said, no,
What?
I don't know. Yeah, I've got to change my tune a little bit here. I think there might be a quarterback change even in Stillwater. We'll see.
Well, I will say this. Oklahoma State and UCF and several other teams have not looked dominant this season, right? So this is about the point in the season, and we're about halfway through almost for the entire season, right? Where it kind of shakes out, and you can kind of see, okay, the non-conference folks are out of the picture. The folks that are playing, easy teams like most people do, tune-up games, right? Bye games. Those are out. So now you're starting to see what these teams are going to be for the rest of the season, right? And some of the storylines that we've had for the Big 12 have been pretty consistent when we started at the beginning of the season. Some of them have not. Iowa State, I was looking for big things from. BYU, I was not. I was not expecting much out of the Cougars. Colorado has done better than I expected them to as well. I mean, there's plenty of reasons for Colorado to lose every week, but they they're winning the games that they lost last year. So, when you talk about consistent players and when you talk about consistent teams, Kansas State, there's another example. They've had a lot of close games. They've had a lot of they're 4-1. But again, they've played and won a lot of close games. And the way they do that is by consistently doing the simple things really well. Some of these other teams, you'd expect more out of OSU this year. I think I expected more out of TCU this year. I expected Kansas to do better with the quarterback coming back, considering how he performed before, but he hasn't. I expected UCF to perform better, but again, quarterback's been an issue for us. So to me, it's one of those things where this is why we play the games, and OSU just doesn't seem to have that dominant ability to win those games or come back in clutch situations and win that they had a year ago. It just isn't there.
Yeah, it's really weird to me just to see this Oklahoma State team completely fall on its fall apart. Now if this team goes on and wins the rest of the games on the schedule and wins 6 straight or whatever, I'll be eating my words here, but that still would be 9-3. In preseason wise, I thought worst off would be 10-2. To be honest, the K-State Utah games back to back, I thought we'd split one of those two, and then we'd stumble kind of how we did last year against you guys against UCF. And stumble's the wrong word. That game we fell flat against UCF and had nothing to show when it was 45-3. But I thought we'd have kind of another one of those games down the stretch here this season after losing to either Utah or K-State. I did not see us open up the conference play 0-3, and I did not see our defense playing this bad at all. I mean, it's one thing for your offense to play bad to Oklahoma State, and it's definitely not playing up to expectations. Ollie Gordon, we've talked about this several weeks in a row now. It's just not played up to anywhere close to where I thought he'd be. I didn't think we'd be talking about a Boise State guy as the running back, contender for Heisman. I thought we'd talk about Ollie Gordon. I was really hoping we would be too. The oldest offensive line in the Big 12, oldest offensive line in the nation. But with that being said, the defense really is just not even letting us get a chance most of the time here. Teams are running all over us, Utah especially, and it's an odd thing too because when Utah played Oklahoma State and Stillwater, we knew they were going to run the ball. They have a freshman quarterback under center, and if they're not going to be running the ball, then he's got to be the next Heisman Trophy type of guy, and Johnny Manziel running around out there and just doing a bunch of crazy things, but he didn't have to. They just ran the ball over us at home to open up the conference.
Well, here's the thing about Utah, right? We said this before. They did it last year without their octogenarian quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And even him, he just managed the game really well. He's a decent quarterback. He's got a lot of football under his belt, but he's not anything special. He's not a guy that's going to be a first rounder on any NFL draft boards, right? Cam Rising is who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of the K-State model where they do the fundamental things really well, and they proved last year that they could be successful without it, which is why everybody was excited about Utah this year with Cam Rising back. They are going to be who they're going to be, and that's the same type of team that they were last year, which means that's going to put them into conference contention because they have a great defense and they have consistent. They're really good on execution on their offense. There was a certain coach that went by the moniker of the Pirate at Texas Tech, who for a very long time ran a really, really simple offense. And you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, Mike Leach. Yeah,
exactly. And Mike Leach was very successful at Texas Tech, one of the most successful coaches they ever had. And the reason for that is he would run the same plays over and over and over and over and over again until everybody knew it and could execute it with such precision that you couldn't stop it. And I feel like Utah is the personification of that type of mentality.
Yeah, I think they are. I just, as an Oklahoma State fan, it pains me to say that we're playing this badly, of course, but it also is painful when I am not a football guy. Growing up, love watching football, but played flag football, right? So I'm not speaking from a knowledge base here more than you would think we would need to stop the run going into that Utah game. And they can do everything perfect. I just didn't think they were that much better at running the ball than we were at stopping it. You
It's
mean
the
I mean
lines.
it's just one of those things I thought we'd be. I it's something where you game plan against it. You go, you know what? We might have not the greatest defense in the entire world, but Utah did to the in Oklahoma State's defense of their defense. We allowed 22 points. Normally in a Big 12 game, you can score enough, especially when you have all your guys, and you have Bowman, you have Gordon, you have etc. But their defensive line was able to get to us enough where we were going 3-and-out, multiple possessions, had the ball for 17 minutes against them. And the fact that they only scored 22 is kind of bearing the lead a little bit because it looks good because we scored like 19 points. We scored 16 of those in the final 5 minutes. But all that to say, the Utah Oklahoma State game just looks really weird points wise at the end of the day because of that. But in all reality, the time possession, Oklahoma State just didn't even get the ball that often. I mean, they just were
But
running it and bleeding the clock.
Calvin, that is, that's for UCF fans, they'll remember O'Leary ball, right? That's an SEC
Oh,
style football, right? Which is control the clock, have a really good defense, and be able to control the clock on offense. And that's it, right? Versus high flying offenses. When Casey Keenum, I don't know if you remember that guy, he
yeah.
played in the NFL a little bit. He played for Houston, right? They were a ranked team. They were number 11 or something. They came to UCF. They were undefeated. I believe they were undefeated. Came to us, and we played them and we beat them. The way that we beat them in their high flying offense was by having a stout defense and being able to run the ball consistently. That's what I'm saying. Their fundamentals are really, really good. Their offensive line, if you stack the box, they're doing shifts and twists and a bunch of other things that they do so that they're not going to allow you to dictate where the mismatches are against the offensive line. They're going to use motion. They're going to use, not so much motion. That's the wrong term. They're going to use their linemen and shifts and twists and different things to be able to create mismatches for the offense. They may not have the numbers on the line, but if you get enough people in position, in the right position, it's kind of like a tank going through a line fortification, right? You focus your power on a piece of the line and you get through it and you do it consistently. That's what they do. It's really good offensive line play. They don't need to overpower you if you stack the box. They're going to use scheme to create mismatches against the defense, and that's why they're successful. And that's why they're consistently successful. It's fundamental football. And that's the challenge. That's why they're successful. Same way with K-State. Why is K-State successful? K-State can run the ball. Why can K-State run the ball? Because they have a system of O-linemen that they continuously feed. And a lot of them are 3-stars that they bring up and they mature until they get to the point that they get the line. And again, that line plays, the offensive line plays fundamentally really, really well. That's the strength of their offense of their team year in and year out. So as long as you can do those fundamental things, you're going to be great, which is what Gus tries to do, right? When we're talking about UCF. But I think what we are missing is a quarterback that is reading the defenses properly and making the right reads consistently. And that's the challenge that we have at UCF.
Yeah. What I'm trying to get at though is all the Oklahoma State fans who are like, oh, hey, let's change the quarterback. Like I'm just trying to get the fact that like, hey, the defense is what's failing us. Like the defense is worse than the Big 12, allowing 493 yards a game, almost allowing 3,000 yards total on the season, through 6 games. The defense is really what's failing us. I do not think that starting a different quarterback is going to change a lot. It might change a little. It might add new energy. It might do some stuff here and there. But for all the Oklahoma State fans and the Twitter stuff and all that fun things and rumors that we're talking about today on October 10th, those to me at least are all. Let's put those at the side because defensively we've been able to stop mobile and running quarterbacks. We've been able to stop and at least slow it down enough where then they have to pass the ball. And we have not really done it real well with Brian Nardo, the new DC here. And last season we didn't do it that well. This season we're not doing it that well at all either. And last season it seems like we got some kind of lucky breaks here and there. But then of course we've got the stats like against BYU and UCF last year, the last couple games of the season where UCF game allowed 45 points. Never a good thing, especially when it's raining, where you go, hey, if we can't do anything, why are they able to do stuff? I mean, just kind of in-game season changes and all that type of stuff as well too. So, with that being said, um, I know it can't be too much fun to talk about the Florida UCF game. I definitely predicted UCF winning. And I
As
just kind of want to ask
did
you,
everybody. All
yeah,
the betting
I
lines
think
were too.
what you guys on the Florida schools podcast, right? Fourth in Florida, weren't you guys talking about, hey, yeah, I think it's going to be at the end of the day, UCF prevails here. And listen, you're 1-1 in the conference. This was not a conference game. You guys could still go and play for the conference championship. You're 3-2 if I mean KJ and can figure it out. But you just touched on the quarterback part of it and want to kind of give you the opportunity here. Just kind of tell us more about this game here and what you took away.
Well, what I'm taking away is, as a team right now, this team isn't a conference championship contending team. Versus UF, few things that we took away. Offensively, we were offensive. KJ Jefferson, again, he's shown flashes all season long where he can either for a half or for a whole game. Like if you look at the Sam Houston game, which Sam Houston, yeah, they're G5, but they're doing really, really well and beat some other teams that they shouldn't, right? But the challenge we have is KJ Jefferson. He's not reading the offenses or defenses properly to make the right offensive read, and it's hurting us because he's not checking down. The big thing that the Gators were doing was stacking the box. If you're going to do that, you want to stretch the field by going to the sideline. They did that a little bit in the second half. They did not do that in the first half with someone like Johnny Richardson. The screen game wasn't there. The pitches, basically, they're not stretching, and they've done it. Colorado and UF was the same way. If they're going to stack the box, you got to loosen the box to open up the run game because we have a great run game, but you got to give those guys some breathing room, and that's that scheme. Defensively, this team actually played really, really well in the second half. They shut them out in the second half. Florida had a big second quarter, but offensively, we put 2 field goals up. We've had red zone issues the last 2 games. And, at the end of the day, if you're not scoring, you're not winning. And we had 1 turnover this game, but your quarterback's 50% in the passing game. That's going to be a problem. So KJ Jefferson should be better. He had a lot of hype coming into this game. And that's the biggest issue for us against the Gators. Again, if KJ Jefferson completes 60% of his passes, we win that game. You know what I mean? If he's making the right reads, if he's handing the ball off when he's supposed to, or in the RPOs, if he's making the right read there. The last 2 games, he's just looked lost. And the question is Gus Malzahn going to make any changes? So I think this
do you like the guys that would be their options then?
Well, I mean, we did have Ja'Cory Brown coming in from Miami this year. We had a pretty highly touted quarterback that came in, was 17 years old when he joined the team this year, but just needs a little seasoning. So I think your only other option is Ja'Cory Brown. I don't know what Gus is seeing in practice to be able to say, this is my guy or this is not my guy. We put a lot of money and NIL into KJ Jefferson. He is capable of it. He did it at Arkansas until he got hurt. So, this was a Heisman contending guy. And as a sophomore and junior. So he can do it. I don't understand what's happened to KJ Jefferson or what broke KJ Jefferson's brain. If I'm being honest. So if that's the case, we've got to get him into a passing rhythm, and that's Gus understanding what he's got with the guy between the ears, right? And getting him into a passing rhythm so we can break up the defense and start getting some guys offensively. But KJ's also got to do the quarterback thing, which is if you see a defense, you've been around long enough, you should be able to read a defense and say, hey, there's my hot read if they're overloading you on a blitz or something like that. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think he gets a half in the next game at Cincinnati, if he stinks it up against Cincinnati, then I think you might see Ja'Cory Brown coming in, because
Yeah.
Gus has to. Like the whole hype leading up to this season is we've got the roster we want. They got NIL, plenty of NIL money in to buy the roster he wanted. He's got that. There's no reason we shouldn't be winning more games than what we are.
Yeah. No, I can only agree. You guys are leading the conference in rushing still. Even after, a 13-point performance against Florida, which
they shut down our running game at
yeah.
2.7 yards per carry. Why are they doing that? Because we aren't stretching the field, and no matter, like, to me, okay, their head coach is not going to survive the season. He's a failed experiment, right? However, Florida does pay and attract top talent. They're in the recruiting rankings for a reason every single year. So you have individuals. They got a 400-pound lineman, and this is one of the things we talked about on the 4th of Florida thing, right? Is they've got Refrigerator Perry basically as a down lineman for them. So you've got talented guys. If you aren't leveraging your strengths, you're not going to out-athlete them. They're going to be at worst similar athletes, if not superior athletes. And Florida schools, what do they have? Always they have an advantage, especially in the skills players. They have an advantage as far as the athlete is concerned. They can out-athlete you, right? Because it's Florida kids, and you can't do that against Florida. So you've got to beat them with scheme and consistency. We didn't do either one. And if KJ Jefferson is not going to play like a decent quarterback, he went into the swamp and beat the Gators with an inferior Arkansas team with a worse line. I don't know what's happened to him this year, but he's not playing like the KJ Jefferson of old. So we've got to figure that out and make sure that we're taking care of making the adjustments that we need to be able to compete. That's Gus Malzahn's job. And Tim Harris, the offensive coordinator, came out this game and said, we're changing things. So it'll be interesting to see what UCF does this week against Cincinnati, because Cincinnati does have a good defense.
Yeah, that's one of the more shocking things, to be honest, is that Cincinnati's defense is as good as it is. The other shocking thing from this past weekend, though, was Texas Tech going and beating Arizona, which listen, when Utah beat Oklahoma State, I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe they're the best team in the conference. I'll live with it. It is what it is. Hopefully we can play them again this fall in Arlington. But no, then they lose to Arizona, and then you have Texas Tech beating Arizona. I mean, this is really, we talked about this several times here. This is why the Big 12, I think, is so much fun to watch. It really is the dog-eat-dog conference of everything in football. There's just not one team that is standing clear and head and shoulders above the rest. And so far, the unbeaten teams have only played 5 games, BYU, and the rest of the teams have all played 6 games, at least have 1 loss. So this is kind of one of the weird things here, I'd say, with the Big 12, where I'm going, man, we just got a really fun conference. Every week, you don't know what you're in for. You can watch anything. Now, if you're watching Oklahoma State football, I think you're in for a lot of rushing yards against us. But I'll sound the drum off here a little bit here with the kick drum. But with that being said, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the power rankings here and just kind of who you got here as top of the Big 12. I currently have no reason to not have BYU and Iowa State kind of 1-2 up there in the top, except for the fact that I do think Texas Tech maybe deserves just at least an honorable mention here with being one of the top things, even though to open up the season, they almost lost to Abilene Christian, ABCU, as you mentioned several times. So you can get better as the season goes along. I always know that. But with that being said, I mean, they've Tech, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, and West Virginia are right behind there as, undefeated in the Big 12 so far. So what are you thinking?
The difference for me, so Texas Tech has proven to have a really good offense, right? They lead the conference in the number of points scored, and that's what matters, right? Their defense, though, if you're stacking up against other teams within the conference and the other top teams, does not stack up, right? So you've got Texas Tech thus far this season has 236 points for and 194 against. That's a pretty small spread over 6 games, right? Now, conversely, number 2 in the rankings and only because they've only played 5 games and undefeated are BYU and Iowa State. BYU has scored 165 points with only allowing 79. Iowa State has scored 156 points while only allowing 50. So that's 10 points per game, right? If you have a strong defense and a relatively confident offense, you're going to win a lot of games, especially in the Big 12.
Yeah. I thought you were going to add on to that. No, I mean, that was such a solid point there. It's
That's my point. I mean,
yeah.
that is the point. When you're starting to evaluate these teams, right? The teams that are winning games and have a fairly decent offense and have a very strong defense, those are going to be your conference contenders. So if I'm looking to rank these folks, for me, it's probably going to be Iowa State number 1, BYU number 2.
Yeah.
And then followed behind that, I'm going to say I still like K-State after them, considering the rest of the contenders. So for me, it would be Iowa State, BYU, K-State, and I'm forgetting about Utah. So actually Utah, K-State, and then Texas Tech. That would be my top 5.
Yeah, the Texas Tech here for me, I think they're just a little bit better than Colorado. I just like them a little bit more. But that being said, looking so far, Tech has they've beaten Arizona, which I think is a very good team offensively, but also they're very one-dimensional offensively. So they just have we mentioned several times. They just have Fafita and McMillan.
That's it.
Those are the guys.
That's
And when
Arizona
Fafita's not
football.
playing well, they lose games, and that's exactly what happened. So that's for me where I'm like Arizona does not make the top 5. I don't think they're as good at all as I thought they would be. I thought they'd at preseason it was like, hey, will Fafita or McMillan be the Heisman Trophy guys? Will they be in contention for it? And
Well, they still
McMillan
can.
has a chance to be top 5 draft pick. Honestly, he's
They
incredible.
they still can be, Calvin.
Well, yeah, I mean,
As
no one's
individual
yeah,
players, and as well as I do, if you stop McMillan, you stop Arizona. So that means every single team that has played against Arizona has had a safety over the top that shades towards McMillan, and they're putting their best cornerback on him. At the same time, they know McMillan's going to go to him, right? Which means that he has to have time to break loose. They're not doing it with scheme. So if that's the case, those 2 players can still be in Heisman contention, right? And obviously, quarterback's more likely than a wide receiver, right? But those 2 can still be top of the draft boards. They can still be, excellent players and be on a team that is not performing well because they don't have the other pieces. Or not, I shouldn't say isn't performing well, isn't performing as well as they could be if they had other pieces. Let's put it that way.
very true. But with that being said, no one's talking about them in the national spotlight. It's like these guys are one of the top 4 or 5 right now for Heisman Trophy contention. Now they could be back there later on this season, but right now it is the Boise State running back, and then it is a
Empty.
bunch of other and it's a bunch of Big Ten and a bunch of SEC guys. They're kind of mixture of, Jalen Milroe, but then last week against Vanderbilt, and we get the whole thing. But I totally agree with you. Season's not over
Let me
yet.
say this about that. Congratulations, Vanderbilt, because it was so nice to be in a bar up here, watching that game with all the Bama fans and watching them lose.
Oh, of course.
It was friggin' amazing. There was one Vandy guy in the bar, which we all know the fan base for Vandy isn't that great, right? And you had all these Alabama people, and they hadn't beaten them. I think the statistic was something like 30 years. I mean, let me put it to you this way. UCF had beaten Alabama more recently than what Vanderbilt had. So
Oh, yeah.
that level of Schadenfreude was freaking amazing for me at that bar that week.
Yeah, and the last time Vanderbilt beat Alabama was in 1984. So we're talking almost 30 years ago. I mean, if not right at it actually. I mean, but basically 30 years ago. So at this point here, it's 40 years ago. I'm yeah, doing math wrong. 40 years ago almost. Excuse me.
We're
But,
mathing.
but with that being said here, yeah, it's not my strong suit. Everyone knows that. But that being said here, I mean, shocked by Texas Tech for sure, beating Arizona at Arizona. But that being said here, yeah, my Power 5 here is very similar. I just have BYU at 1 instead of Iowa State, and that's because I really that heck the way they beat K State and how they did it was a little fluky, I'd say, in the amount of points they put on so quickly, but still 38-9 is one heck of a good score. And they did that BYU defense looks scary when they're able to shut down Avery Johnson after seeing Avery Johnson the next week play against Oklahoma State and just tear us a new one. So
Yeah, but
that
KSU,
was a
but K,
that was an opening. That was an eye-opening experience.
yeah, but Kansas State. I mean, they've been flirting with fire all year long. You had the Tulane game. And Tulane's going to be a good team, but you had the Tulane game. There was another one that they had a close win that they had to pull it out at the end. I can't remember that they were behind. And when we're looking at who KSU is, they've been playing. It's 157-98 over 5 games, right? So the difference between those two scores, considering who they played and playing, bye games that were involved in that, they've been in a lot of really, really close games, especially going into the third and fourth quarter where they've had to come from behind and win. So am I that surprised by it? Probably not.
I personally just got to disagree there. Maybe we'll have a little bit of Skip and Stephen A on this point here because I I just think that I think K-State's pretty good. I think that in the end of the year, they will be one of the teams top 3 in the conference record-wise. They do not lose a lot of games. They're granted, it's a newer coach, but that whole system for K-State, you talked about earlier with their lines and their linemen, all the stuff, their offense and defensive lines, they're just able to shove guys around. And I just think that BYU, win. I know it's in Provo. I know it's a night game. I know they put a lot of points together real quick. It was a little fluky there, but still, but winning by more than 3 scores to me is, I mean, it is substantial here. And I do think K-State's a decent team to beat. And so far K-State's the teams they've beaten. You're right. They have not beaten a lot of teams by a lot of points, but they have just absolutely they blew out Oklahoma State, beat us by 22, and we got a late touchdown to make them even look that good. And then, they also blew out Arizona 31-7. I mean, I know that was a non-conference, game, weirdly enough there, but K-State's 4-1. So if I'm gonna I'll talk about BYU a little bit. I'll give us a mention, give Trevor and Saturday's Warrior a little bit of props there. I mean, it's a good win. I mean, they're standing tall, undefeated, pretty darn good. So
Yeah, Arizona, surprisingly enough, as good as that combo is, they've only put 135 points up for the entire season in 5 games. That is the second lowest, only behind the Houston Cougars.
yeah, they really are those two guys, and that's it. I mean, it is just really easy to see. I kind of do wish Oklahoma State was playing them this year because I am not looking forward to the game. We got not this weekend, but next in Provo. With that being said, here though, yeah, the run out the rest of my Power 5 is the same teams that you have. I just had that different order at the top of Iowa State and K State here, and that more or less is here just to spend a minute or two on Iowa State. They granted win against Iowa at Iowa, granted by 1, but still pretty good. I mean,
Big
Iowa
win.
always Iowa
Iowa's
their
Iowa's
head coach is
defense.
and Iowa's famous thing, their head coach, longest tenured coach in FBS. So I mean, they do not lose games, generally speaking. Iowa is a strong contender in close games. They always win. Seems like Kirk and the whole team gets it done. And then the other teams they've beaten so far here is where I kind of fall apart on Iowa State a little bit here. And that's why I just have the difference. Is you beaten Houston 20-0 at Houston, but still Houston's not known for having a great fan base there and a great packed stadium. So I'm not
Oh, it
really going
was
to give a
empty.
ton. Yeah,
It was empty.
I need to keep going. and then beating Baylor at home by double digits, actually doubling their score. Pretty darn good win. Pretty darn good win. But is an 0-3 Baylor team that great of a win? Is a 1-2 Houston team? This is talking about the Big 12, that good of a win, and especially Baylor and Houston combined have 4 wins on the season. So I want to, hey, Iowa State, trying to give you your props. Let's see how you do this weekend at West Virginia. And kind of come back to this a little bit here. BYU coming up. Let's see how you're doing. K-State got to go play at Colorado this weekend too. That'll be a more of an interesting one here as well too. And with that being said, here I do just want to talk about the schedule here for for the Big 12 here, the cup coming this weekend, and kind of get your picks, see what you're thinking here as well. Of course, when listening to this, it might be Friday, but hopefully it's Thursday still. Got Utah at Arizona State, and Cam Rising's back. So is this an easy dub for Utah?
Easy dub, probably not. I think the difference is going to be the defense. The offense has been only slightly worse than what Arizona State's has been. Arizona State's strength has been the running game with Scattaboo, right? That's how they've been able to win games. I mean, that guy's a little tank. If you ever watched any of their games, he's very hard to bring down, right? That also means he's going to wear down throughout the season. But the difference for me is defense. Utah has only allowed 75 points, right? And they've been consistent offensively. We talked about it earlier. They consistently win with or without Cam Rising, right? So they're not going to have a huge drop off. If anything, they should have a boost in their numbers if Cam Rising is making a positive difference for them. So you got a team in Arizona State that has a decent defense, 119 points allowed, versus a team that has allowed 75 points in 5 games. To me, I think this is Utah all the way. And I think it's going to be big because the only way Arizona State can win is if Scattaboo has a big day and Utah's defense is really good against the run.
Yeah, I'm not picking any type of upset here, unless something fluky happens, like you said. With also going on here, hey, going to the UCF game this weekend. Glad it's happening. Looking forward to seeing this matchup here of Cincinnati at UCF, but I gotta pick UCF easily in this one, right? Like I'm not trying to jinx you guys at all here, but I mean this Cincinnati just. I mean, granted, they've got one in the Big 12, but they're nothing to write home about at all, I would think.
Well, I mean, UCF is underperformed. Let's just get that out of the system. And I don't know where their headspace is at right now, right? We had Xavier Townsend leave this past week. There's been a lot of rumors around us trying to keep him happy for a long period of time. But KJ Jefferson has to get his groove back. And we have to get Kobe loose so that we can, pop the running game. Cincinnati has had a fairly decent above average defense this year. So, and offensively, we were slightly better than them from a points perspective. From a yards perspective, UCF should run far and away. But I don't know what to make of this team. I don't know where their headspace is at right now. So I think this is a closer game than we would like. But at the same time, I still think UCF comes out at top.
Yeah, I really do too. I think this is kind of a UCF get right game. Yeah, I mean, this is one where I could see you guys really winning. Cincinnati so far this season, they beat Houston. They held them scoreless, which is a good thing there to keep any team scoreless. Blank any opponent's great because they even allowed 20 to Towson earlier on in the season. But with that being said, I feel like that Houston game, it's not really indicative of how good or bad their defense is. And then they lost Texas Tech by 3. And I just spent a little bit of time talking up Tech. So really curious to see how that UCF game goes. Then we have Arizona at BYU. It's not after dark. It's going to be during the daylight. It's 3:00 at least Eastern. So, we know it'll be a noon kickoff ish, right?
I'm taking BYU all the way.
BYU all the day. Yeah.
Yeah, they are better offensively and better defensively. I don't have a lot of confidence in Arizona. I told you that at the beginning, because they're a 1-2 punch, and that's it. If you shut it down, or Fafita, you can get some pressure on him, and you don't give him all day to allow McMillan to get loose. You shut it down, and BYU's strength this year is the defense. So I 100% think that BYU will run away with this one against Arizona.
Yeah, same here. Then we've also got the last two matchups of the night. I think are the most fun ones and could be the most entertaining ones here. Iowa State at West Virginia, 11th ranked Iowa State, which it does shock me here because they're the top ranked Big 12 team right now. And like I said, 2 wins against Houston and Baylor so far, which have combined 4 wins on the season. So I listen, 11 overall ranking just seems really high for me for Iowa State. But going into Morgantown here, do they have West Virginia's number? Are they gonna be able to pull it off there?
Well, West Virginia typically plays really, really well at Morgantown, right? They have a obviously solid fan base. I'm glad that we're in the same conference as them. We were supposed to be when we were in the Big East, and then they moved on to the Big 12. So actually, a big shout out to West Virginia fans, because they are probably kindred spirit when it comes to the veracity of their fan base, right? That being said, I'm kind of a believer in Iowa State. I told you they were going to be tough all year long. I'm going to pick Iowa State in this one. And it's not because of their record, it's because of their defense. West Virginia has been kind of spotty. Garrett Green has been great under pressure. He's been able to get West Virginia out of a lot of jams this year. But I think Iowa State and their defense is going to get it done in Morgantown.
Yeah, I think Iowa State is really good, but you know what? I just saw West Virginia put up 38 points in Stillwater, so I'm gonna say I think West Virginia is gonna pull this one out and win it. I just think Iowa State's a little too
Are
early
you
to give them that
are
much
you
credit.
overrating? Is there a little bit of a homer overration, hoping that West Virginia is better than you think they are because they did that at home?
Yeah, for sure. But also West Virginia is undefeated in conference, and so far their wins are against KU by 4, which KU's bad, right? Like we're all pretty sure KU's not good. They're 0-3
One and
in
five.
conference and 1-5 in the season. But then their other win is they just absolutely just killed Oklahoma State in Stillwater, which we had their number. Like it to me at least, yes, West Virginia was able to play loose and free and whatever all we want to say, but I do think there's some validity in the fact that West Virginia could be good. Garrett Green is not an easy guy to control. He definitely is good at getting out of the pocket, making some reads, and he definitely has that. If he was playing for Oklahoma State, I'm not saying who knows what would happen, but it would definitely help us out to have a little bit more mobile of a quarterback when our quarterback right now, who's under center, is just not able to move around in the pocket. I mean, our offensive line is not allowing that many sacks. It's fifth in the nation allowed in sacks, which is nice, but with that being said, Garrett Green was showing up Alan Bowman this past weekend, and I do think he's pretty darn good. I'm also hoping he's good too. I mean, I can't lie. Hopefully the bias rings out that West Virginia is 3-2 with their 2 losses on the season to Penn State at home in a really weird game that was delayed for part of it, and at Pittsburgh by 4, which is a game they should have won. So it's a hope. It's a bias hope for sure. I'm not going to say it's not. Last game of the night here though is definitely one of those callbacks to Pac-12 after dark. If it was just 2, of the former Pac-12 teams, but it's K-State going to Colorado and Boulder. I know we've got the Cocaine Willie guys, Bob Trollsby and a couple others going to the game, so it'll be great to get their insights here from the game here in Boulder, Colorado. But K-State at Colorado is is there any bias on your end that you hope Colorado pulls this one out and is somehow good so far because they beat
Nope.
UCF? Nope.
Nope. I want Colorado to lose every game.
Okay. Tell me
But
why.
this is not a biased pick. I just think Kansas State's strength, as well as their offensive line, is their secondary this year. They've played pretty well. They've gotten good turnovers, and yeah, Colorado has a good defense. I mean, they're pretty close offensively, but Colorado with Kansas State actually having a slightly better offensive performance than Colorado, believe it or not. They haven't put as many yards up, but as far as the points is concerned, they're consistently able to run the ball, control the clock, and they have a better defense, significantly better defense than what Colorado does. They don't have, if you're looking at individual players, obviously I think Colorado has two of the most talented players in the Big 12. But as a team, defensively, K-State's a better team. They have the ability to cause turnovers, and they're slightly better offensively with the ability to control the clock. So to me, I think this is Kansas State beating Colorado, and there's a reason the Buffs are not ranked. And it's not because Dion is their coach.
I will say when you talk about strengths and weaknesses here, there are some stark things. One, Colorado, second in the Big 12 in passing yards per game, which could be a lot, but they're bunched up there at the top with Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, TCU, Texas Tech, and on defense, Colorado, they're an okay defensive, passing team. But just to only back up your point here and say they are not a good defense on rushing the ball at all whatsoever. Offensively, Colorado does not. They are the worst of the Big 12 offensively in rushing the ball in yards per game, 80.6 yards per game. And then defensively, I would say, they're middle of the road. They're not that bad. I mean, they allow 156 yards. A game, which is not the worst in the world. The worst in the world is 235 yards per game. But with that being said here, K-State, second in the Big 12 in rushing the ball. I do think that those numbers will continue to back themselves up out, and K-State will dominate the game like we've mentioned here several times already tonight, that, hey, you know what? They're good to run the ball. They have good O-line, good D-line. They'll handle line of scrimmage and finish out there pretty darn strong. So, be a good deal. Well, last a couple things here I wanted just to kind of mention here and end out the podcast, though, is that the votes here from Sankey and others of not doing a 70 FBS team schedule, at least right now, it's not going through. Do you think that there's more to come on that kind of info here with the next couple of weeks, or do you think maybe we should take kind of a pause in the conversation for a year or so?
Yeah, there's nothing coming out in a couple of weeks. Let me put it to you this way. There is going to be a move to consolidation and separation, right? We've been talking about it for a while. The Big 10 and the Big 12 had their little parlay meeting to kind of, or not Big 10 and Big 12, Big 10 and the SEC had their parlay meeting to kind of figure out what their position on all of this was going to be. The NCAA commissioner right now is highly focused on, and has come out and said, he's new, right? Has said, hey, these teams belong in their own subdivision. They're trying to figure out how to do that. The Greg Sankey is doing one of two things. Like, I think he wants a separation, but he wants a separation not only from the G5 and the other, or whatever it is now, G6, G8, whatever we want to call it, right? He wants a separation from them, but he wants it on his terms by maintaining. He's doing what he should be doing for the SEC as a commissioner of the conference, right? He is trying to position the SEC in a way that the revenue distribution will be favorable and continue to be in the Big Ten and the SEC's favor in any structure going forward. Do I think this is going to happen midseason? No. Do I think this is an evolution of the next conversation and maybe a negotiation point? Yes. Well, no matter what the solution is, if it does happen, the only way this works is if the SEC and if the Big 12 and the ACC accept their fate as the lesser conference. It's going to get a lower distribution, and it's going to canonize this going forward. They just have too much. They have too many of the brands for that to make for that not to happen. And so they want to take it from, all right, we're going to get it based on the contracts that we do individually, to, hey, we want this separate organization, but we want to be able to justify and canonize. And you know what? You saw that on the BCS negotiation, or not the BCS, the playoff negotiation, right? What happened? The ACC pitched a fit, and then, as good as your mark was, they found a way to finagle it so that they got more of that distribution going forward by a healthy percentage. So either the Big 12 plays along and tries to make it up in basketball, or or you'll be at the stalemate for the next year or so until they figure out and everybody has a chance to stamp on their negotiation principles to come up with whatever the final solution is going to be. But I don't think it'll be mid-season.
Yeah, I don't think so either, and I think it'll be a year, I hope longer, honestly, until these conversations happen. But I think they'll just keep coming at this point with talk about an expanded playoff, talk about other stuff of just other money interests and revenues and revenue generations that could happen, where it only increases the amount of money that goes to the certain amount of schools that want to be there or are part of that. I mean, there's a reason why, in my mind, it's a prime example of okay, well, why did UCLA join the Big Ten? Yeah, I mean, of course, why did USC and UCLA join, right? Isn't that going to only make their travel a bunch more, et cetera, et cetera? And it's just money. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum recently here. So it's just a money deal overall. And once I actually saw the numbers of, hey, if you're USC and UCLA, you're getting this much money when staying in the Pac-12, and you could be getting this much money by joining the Big Ten. It's just way too much of a difference there to not just go ahead and take it. And to anyone, like, I remember having the conversations this past offseason of like, well, isn't travel going to factor into this, all type of stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to learn. I had to just read the information, knowledge, and all type of stuff and know how much more money it is per year that these universities are getting. All to say, this is only going to keep happening where there's talks more and more of slimming the amount of teams that get the amount of money and more money goes to the top teams. And they really do have kind of a tiered deal here going forward. And I had to say something that several coaches have said. I think in the future here, you'll have college football GMs all over everywhere, and they're handling NIL money. They're handling all the other funds.
We already do.
Yeah,
UCF has one.
yeah. I mean, it's just only going to be more, more and more prevalent here. With that being said, also, just talking about NIL for a moment or two, Oklahoma State has a 4-night kind of concert series coming up here in the spring where there's country music artists coming and packing Boone Pickens Stadium, all for NIL money. At the end of the day, supposedly it's raised about $3 million right now, which it's sold out. So that's what it has raised and what it will raise. Now, of course, this could be more with other sales at the concert type stuff. But this is really just a question here to you of, do you think we'll see more creative ways the universities are looking to make money like this? Or do you think universities will kind of try to stay out of this whole NIL funding a little bit and kind of, try to wait out until there's a judge ruling, all type of stuff here? Because I truly feel like this is the Wild West and we're only going to see more of it.
No, they won't wait because they won't be able to compete. So how they fund it, there's different approaches for different schools. And a lot of that harkens back to what's always been done, right? So the SEC's always done handshake deals with guys on trips, on river boats, or 12 miles out, in international waters. So it's, and I'm not joking about that, right? I know some Mississippi State boosters. I know some Ole Miss boosters. I know some UF boosters. That's how it was done in the past. You go on a riverboat cruise. You got a bunch of, okay, I'm not even going to go there, entertainment on the boat. And you got handshake deals that are done with boosters on said boat, right? So that's going to continue. The question is how are the rest of the schools going to compete, right? UCF, honestly, from our perspective, we accepted that early. I mean, you got Gus Malzahn with T-shirts on for Bowser when he was here, etc., trying to generate revenue dollars. He said from the get-go, we're going to participate in this. We got SJ Tui, who, if you guys are familiar with The Blind Side, SJ Tui was the son on The Blind Side. He's here, and his only job is to generate dollars and leverage his network. He's pretty good at his job, right? It's going to continue to happen. It's not going to stop. And the schools that aren't currently participating or can't participate, they're either going to get left behind or they're going to find unique ways to generate that revenue. And it sounds like OSU is doing that either because they don't have the capability or because Mike Gundy has been so adamant against it. And I think at the end of the day, one of the things that's going to change is that umbrella is all going to come under the schools. And as it comes under the schools, then you're going to see more school facilities and resources be utilized to generate revenue for that fund.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where Oklahoma State is not that far off from other schools in NIL funding, K-State, et cetera, and other state schools in the Big 12. But there's a lot to be said for how much more volume and energy and resources could be put towards the NIL funding and how much the Twitter sphere and media sphere just runs wild with any information that happens right now through Oklahoma State and just a bunch of speculation. So I'm hopeful that that type of stuff here will calm down a little bit and more of it will be, hey, the NIL is this and these players are getting this and this is how it works, and there won't be the Gundy saying, hey, tell your agent we're not talking until after the season's over, and there will not be any comments like that. Really, just not that I think that's a bad idea, just because there's just no reason to say stuff like that when you're not provoked.
Listen,
That's
listen.
honestly the issue I have is when Gundy talks about the NIL and isn't asked about it directly and could just let the question go. He could just say
Eight
a couple words and let it go by without making it a soundbite.
the AD, it's his job to, and then there's going to be the head coach, and then there's going to be the GM, right? And I don't think the head coach will report to the GM ever in college football like it is in the NFL. But I do think that there may be parallel positions there when it comes to that, right? So at the end of the day, all I'm going to say to Oklahoma State fans is this: for the sake of global warming and the sake of your NIL fund, if Mike Gundy takes 10% less to spend on his Aquanet purchases for his hair and turns that into the NIL fund, I think you guys will be just fine.
Well, I'm hoping that's the issue. I'm hoping that's the only issue at all is that Gundy spend too much on hair products, so we can keep with that here because I feel like there's some more big movers and shakers involved here, and I feel like could be another story of how Oklahoma State's timing just isn't the greatest in the world. And if Team Pickens was still here today, maybe Jalen Milrow
Oh,
would be
you
under center.
how,
I
how
mean, there's
long ago?
just so
How
much
long ago was
speculation.
that? Was that how long has he been gone? 10 or 15 years now?
I think 6, maybe 7.
Has it
Um,
really only been that long?
Yeah, I mean, towards the end of his life, he was not as healthy as, he would want to be around the Oklahoma State facilities. So, yeah, I gotta look it up here just because we're talking about this, and I should just immediately know. But
Yes, you should.
yeah, it's
That guy's been the
2019.
most important. That guy's
It
been the
was,
most important person to your program in a very long time.
and it was he passed away in 2019. So it's 5 years ago. So
Wow. It feels
yeah,
like it's been so much longer than that.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it's been a while, but it's just couple months there before all the COVID stuff happened, or I guess, I mean, a year and a couple months, right? But I think once COVID happened, it just does seem to me, at least, as a 31-year-old, that just so much time has passed since then. You know what I mean? It just does seem like, oh, it's only been 5, but it feels like that 5 has been like truly like a decade's worth of stuff,
Yeah.
going on. So that kind of is how I think about it here,
Listen,
just
he
everything going on.
he was OSU football.
Yeah. Yeah, stadium's named
Oh,
after him. I drive by the
yeah.
stadium every day. I'm gonna see it. Boone Pickens Stadium, and generally speaking, you've got, what, Lubbock, they play in AT&T Stadium. They don't play after the name of a person. What's UCF Stadium name? Am I missing something here where it's
F
all just donors in the rest of Big 12?
No, it's FBC Mortgage Stadium, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, generally it's
um,
companies is what I'm getting at here and not like a person's name. I mean, he's the guy, and there's no ifs, ands, what's about it. I should have him, next to Gundy appear as one of the background photos at this point for the program.
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Work on that. You need to work
yeah,
on that.
I'll you know what? I'll figure it out. I'll get moving and shaking on it. Um, that being said, here, any other thoughts here, or any other things we want to say here
No,
before we wrap this one up?
just a couple things. One, very blessed in Central Florida to have come out with this okay. There are parts of Orlando, especially South Orlando. Orlando's really, really spread out, and there's some parts in South Orlando that were not as fortunate that have had some damage. The folks in Tampa, Sarasota, Bradenton, all those places. Just thoughts and prayers with you guys. We were all kind of under the gun. I came from, for those of you that listen, I live in Santa Rosa Beach. I actually came down to Orlando to be with my children and family down here during the storm and just to be close. And, anytime you have a situation like this, it's never fun, but the coast always has it worse because they're not only contending with the wind, but also the storm surge. So to all those people that are out there, I just want to, give my, I don't want to say condolences, but wish you well on your journey to recovering. And then, for those that are out there that are first responders and those folks that have come from all over. When I was driving down, there were 30, 40 truck convoys of electrical workers, linemen, all of those type of people that were pre-positioning to get ready to come in for the storm and make sure that we have power so that I can do things like this, right? So, it's always sobering when you go through events like this. I've been through two. Calvin, you know this. The listeners probably don't. I've had 2 in 2 weeks. But to all those people that, make sure that people are safe, that make sure we have electrical power so that we can enjoy college football and do all of those, all of the things that we hold dear. Thank you. And I'm sure there's some of the listeners right now that can count themselves in that number. So thank you very much for what you're doing. And as far as the Big 12 is concerned, what makes it fun is what we're seeing and the fact that we have different teams to talk about every week. I hope our team plays well this weekend, but at the end of the day, my heart goes to all those on the West Coast and Central Florida that have been affected by this. And we appreciate everybody that helps us from out of state and within the state and other areas to make sure that we can live the life that we like to live. So I know that was a little hard, like a little heartfelt, a little probably stronger than what you were looking for, but I love being part of the Big 12. Love having college football as a distraction. And if there's anything I can do for those of you that are out there, you can hit me up at Night Bengal. If you've been affected by the storm, I'd be happy to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's incredibly well said, and I've got nothing to add except for also sending all the support I can here from Oklahoma, and yeah, hopefully you guys pull it out this weekend here. It'd be nice to see UCF win, of course, for everything that's been going on throughout campus and stuff. And with all that being said, I think we're gonna go ahead and just kind of wrap up the episode. I'm gonna leave it a little bit lighter note here, and just want to ask you real quick, Roger, who's your MLB team if you have one? They still playing baseball?
Major League Baseball, Cincinnati.
All right. Well, I'm sorry about the Reds. They're not in postseason. But as anyone who's watching this knows, I'm wearing a Padres hat, former Padres employee. Got to say, please win. Just please win. Please beat the Dodgers. It'd be great. It'd be so nice. I just am very nervous about the whole deal, so I want to say it publicly at least once out loud. So I'm holding down the fort here as the lone Padres fan in Oklahoma, I feel like, or at least one of the few. So,
well, I will say this: I've been to Petco Park. Love the city of San Diego. And they're quote unquote a small market team. So I hope they do well and they win. The Reds, I'm so used to this. It's a cycle. When it comes to the Reds, it's always about, all right, when are we making money? Can we get a good enough team to make money, then develop the assets and then sell them off? So it's, we'll get a few good years in and then they'll be what they are. But good luck to the Padres as they pursue their dreams. Just win, baby.
Just win, baby. Yeah, it's the best way to say it. And hey, shout out always to the Reds and good cousin Johnny Bench there as well too. So that being said, here, go Pokes and
go Knights. Charge on.